Welcome back to Cocktails and Classics. I'm Dylan. Joining me, as always, is Ben. It's episode number 9. A band of brothers on our first watch through. That means there's only one after this, so you got to catch up, or you're about to binge it all. You can watch the show on Max. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. I'm sure you had to click through them all to get to here. So, hey, give us a rating. Share us. Show a little love. It helps us out. Episode 9 is Why We Fight. Finally got our Nixon episode. And it's like the most intense, emotionally charged episode in the series. I was kind of like a little disappointed by that. I don't know.
One, I thought like they'd make Nixon more like most of the time everyone who's gotten a focus episode, when they come out of that episode, you're like, wow, that guy's cool. Or like, Randleman gets caught behind enemy lines. You're like, wow, that dude's badass. Lipton during the breaking point, and you're like, damn, this guy kind of went through it, but like he got through it. He rallied the troops. Like he was this dude. Winters goes through this really like big growth arc. Nixon's episode just does not make him look good at all.
No, and it's like, it's just like one thing after another for him, too. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, yeah, you're an alcoholic, so you got a demotion. And he's like, all right, whatever. Oh, your wife's leaving you, and she's taking your dog. Oh, all right, okay.
Hey, you're an alcoholic, and we know it's kind of getting to you about everything with the war because you just lost 4 guys in a plane that you jumped out of, but also their CO died, so now like you're responsible for writing their families to let them know that they died. So, hey, good luck with that.
Oh, hey, and you stumbled upon this thing where the German war machine created camps to murder millions and millions of people, and no one knows about it until now. So, hey, man, just to throw more shit on your fucking emotional palate you have there, yeah, fuck you, Nixon.
Which you've got to wonder, like, how much of the other stuff is what's leading to the whole alcoholic thing.
Yeah.
Seems like, the whole watching the people die. He gets there and then he goes, just kind of spirals down. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it was evident from the first episode where he's like, I've got a case of whiskey in my footlocker.
Well, in Winter's footlocker.
Yeah, sorry. A case of whiskey and I forgot. Yes, it was Winter's footlocker that he put it in. So it was like, yeah, just this whole, which, I mean, he's getting demoted from Battlefield HQ, but he's getting demoted now, like, at the end. Because even he said, he's like, I've never fired my weapon.
Which is interesting, because we've seen him in combat situations, but he's just never fired his gun. Like, he's been in this stuff. Like, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah.
We talked about it before, but we get the young Tom Hardy literally just introduced banging that woman. And then I was like, oh, is that it? That's what we get from him? And then he just kind of shows up throughout the episode to, like, sprinkle a little bit of, like, plot exposition to move us forward in the episode. Like, he walks in, hey, I'm a soldier that you don't know, you've never seen in the series, but we're moving on out. Cool, man.
Yeah. Hey, I know I'm new here and you've been here the whole time, but I have news that you don't have yet. Okay. Weird flex, but alright. Yeah, I feel like a lot that just like... that was weird. One of the weird things to me was when it was just like Nixon walks in and looks at the guys, just like, President died. And then just, like, walks out.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, okay. I feel like that could have been a little bit more exposed other than just like, oh, hey, by the way, this thing happened. All right, bye, guys. So, just before we go into more, like, detail-y stuff that happened, for people listening, I finished this maybe like a half hour before we were working on some technical stuff before we started recording. But I shit you not, like, I had just finished this episode. And I will tell you, if you are planning on doing a binge, either get through it or plan on taking a little time after this episode and letting it sink in and reflect and maybe just take a minute, because I'm not like a big like I'm not like a cries during movie or TV shows, but man, this one got me quite a bit. And once they got to the camp,
Oh man.
I was like, I finished and I was just sat there defeated, tears in my eyes, and was just like, That's when I texted him like, okay, I guess I can. I just finished. I can record whenever you're like, oh, let's go now. I was like, oh god, oh god, oh, the people are gonna get a fresh wound rating because this is.
I mean, yeah, dude. I was kind of brought to tears when, especially when they're at the camp and the one person, one of the prisoners, like comes up and starts to like hug and like kiss. I don't know which soldier it was, and they just like embrace, and I was like, I can't even imagine what that must feel like.
What got me the most is when, because Liebgott's like the translator among the group,
Yeah.
he has to then like stand in the truck, like shout the instructions and tell these people that they're not allowed to leave and they can't eat more than like a little bit. And basically as these people are like, basically they're now looking at them like they're as bad as the Nazis are, and Liebgott just breaks down in the truck. And I was like, damn. Webster's moment where he finally breaks.
Well, isn't
in the bakery.
Is Liebgott the guy who was talking about finding himself a nice Jewish wife and all that? So like he is Jewish.
I think he is Jewish, yeah.
Yeah, so like I mean those are like his people that are also in this camp, so I feel like he's dealing emotionally.
Oh yeah, he's dealing
like,
with the fact that realistically if he was born in a different place it could have been him or his family, or
like he's dealing with this translation, the horror that he is seeing, plus this is also like the Jewish people, like, and I feel like it's just kind of like same with all the guys, really. I mean, every one of them, once they find this camp, are just like, what the hell is this place? Like, and this wasn't even like, this was just a slave labor like work camp. This wasn't even like an extermination death camp. Even though it's still like there is so much death surrounding the place.
Yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to say about this. If people are listening to this and have not gone through and watched everything yet, if you're listening to this before watching it, which is an interesting choice, be aware that yes, that the scenes that take place in the camp are rough. I mean, just when they open the rail car, I think is the other one where I was just like almost sick to my stomach. The one guy's arm just kind of like flops down, and then there's just a pile.
Same point to that to me is like the one person says something like, "Oh, the woman's camp is like down the rail a little way," and you're just like, "Oh."
Or the guy that when he walks up and he's carrying the other, I'm assuming it was a dead body, because that other person's legs looked like they had no bones.
Yeah, like withered.
To get into not the downer talk, another episode where I'm curious to look. I looked at the wiki page, but I'd want to look at IMDb. Not because I know the Tom Hanks directed episode was very much like a big like time jump. But this episode also did a lot of time jumping.
Yeah. Starts in the future, jumps a month back.
And then we kind of follow our way back through, and then you kind of get into at the end, you're listening to them playing the violins again and kind of going through and going, okay, we're back where we started, I also didn't realize how close in time it was from the time FDR died to the time that Hitler killed himself.
It was, only a couple days, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I just know, it was within a month of one another.
Yeah, it was like 18 days.
Wow.
Because Hitler died April 30th and FDR died April 12th.
Yeah, I don't know why. I never put that together.
I feel like we're getting this, like, I don't know. Spiers is such a weird character. He's such a fucking weird dude. with this whole like mythos, like did he kill these guys, that sort of stuff. Then we see him and he's a badass and he's kind of come to fruition and like he's leading Easy Company and now he's cool and like he's the biggest fucking looter out of the group. They're like looking for Spiers and he's like, yeah, he's probably looting or something in the factory. And you're just like, what the fuck?
He's literally going through the drawer, like walking around the desk. It's just like scooping shit into his helmet.
Yeah, he keeps like going back to the post office.
But even the mail guy's like, wow, your mom and dad are going to have quite a collection when you go. And then when he looks at him, and I was just like, oh shit. Because my thought is that's got to be some sort of like bad luck thing, right?
So in the book, Spiers actually went and married a British woman whose she thought her husband had died in the war or whatever, and she ends up getting pregnant. And so like part of the thing is like he's looting and getting all this and like it goes for a lot of money. And so like it helps to fund like his baby and like that sort of stuff. I will say, and we've talked about in past episodes that there is stuff that the book adds. Here, the book does not add much. I feel like this and the next little bit, like to round it all out, I feel like I'm not gonna really be getting much extra because this part of the book was basically like they just added like one or two little detail parts, but like yeah, at this point they're basically like, oh well, we're not on the front lines, so we're gonna be put through some training and we don't like the training, but Winters is pushing us. Like he's basically like gone to the point where he's like so bold now where he's got these guys training or like they get pushed back to one point and they're supposed to, I think Sink or Winters, one of them, like assigns them this big training thing and Spiers is like, we're resting, we're not training. So and then yeah, so it's like other than that, there's not really much the book added.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know how much more you even could kind of add. Like I said, without maybe like because I know I'd read like a lot of the book was taken from like Webster's writings, so maybe if there's more just from his perspective, but just seeing him too at the same time, also that feeling of just like really broken, like to the point where he had never looked that like out of kind of control, where he's even standing up and yelling at the Germans as they're driving by.
Yeah, like why'd you bring us halfway around the world? Like for what? Like why? What is the purpose of this war?
Yeah, I mean, or just the he comes in and
puts that like bakery owner at like gunpoint. Yeah,
gunpoint. It's like, you're telling me you didn't notice the smell, you didn't notice anything, and the guy's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. At the same time, I kind of agree with him. Like, you can't tell me you didn't know.
Yeah, like unless you like never left your thing, but even then, like that's the lady that Nixon walks into her house and like he tosses aside the portrait of her husband and stuff and then sees her later. And you're like, are you that innocent?
You knew.
Yeah.
You knew it. You knew.
You never talked to your husband about what he does for work.
Yeah. Yeah. That was always, when I saw that too, I was like, you knew. You knew what was going on here. Putting it into perspective that we've read about this. And when you read about it or you learn about it in school, you learn what was going on from the jump with the I'm gonna just use the term, the final solution plan the Germans had. Watching this, you kind of forget the fact that no one else in the world really knew.
Yeah. Like, this is them
No one knew until they discovered this.
I feel like they talk about, like, I think they mention it maybe in the episode that, like, they've heard rumors of things like this. And I'm sure, like, I'm sure people flying over in planes, like pilots and stuff, had seen large, like, prisoner of war
Yeah, but
camps,
they're
that sort of stuff.
yeah.
But
Yeah, but there's one thing to see a POW camp. There's another thing to see what that what those camps really were, not from not from the sky.
I don't know. You want to think, and then maybe this is the day and age that we're in where, like, you can have almost any information. You can kind of understand what's going on in the world around you. But, like, you'd like to think that if something was happening in your town or the town over or, like, in the woods in between, that you would know something about that. Whether you're complacent in that or, kind of just ignorant to it. But I feel like you would hear about it. You got to walk down to that bakery. Somebody's being like, oh, yeah, I was walking down the logging road the other day and I saw this, or, like, you know, I feel like word's got to get around town. They're not, they're not that ignorant to it, I feel like. I mean, maybe.
No. And that's I mean, there's no way. There's no way you didn't notice. Well, they knew what was going on when they came when they took everyone like and started sending them to camp. You can't tell me you didn't notice that these people were gone.
And I mean, it's interesting that they also say at the beginning of the episode, like the pre-interview thing, where it's like, each side had a job to do, and that, like, if we just sat down, we might have been friends and shared interests, and he might have been into hunting and fishing, and, it's not that the Germans were bad. Like, it's just that we were fighting a war on opposite sides. Like, you know, it's interesting to see that perspective after 9 episodes of, like, kind of just hatred, I feel like, of the other side. Like, I feel like it is very much so. Most of the show is like, I'm gonna go get them, especially when you see, like, Garnier, like, his brother uh was injured or killed, and, like, you see these comrades die, and I just feel like to hear that now at episode 9, I feel like this episode is kind of like bringing it all back around to, like, obviously the title is Why We Fight. And, it, whatever that reason is, like, I feel like it kind of comes back to the point where they find this concentration camp, and it's like, this is kind of why we fight. Like, we're, saving people, we're helping people, without knowing that we were doing this.
What was weird to me about that entire intro is all of that to then get to the point where I don't know, and I get it. Because again, the average look at episode 2. The one soldier's from the US. He probably has no idea what is going on, that there are camps or anything like that. So not all those guys knew what was going on in those places. If they were in France, they had no clue. So I guess I understand that, but I just don't know how you discover this. You're realistically the first ones to discover what was going on outside of the Nazis who were doing these horrific things. And you're like, yeah, I guess realistically, if we weren't fighting a war, maybe we would have been friends. I don't know, man. I feel like that would have been so burned into me. I don't think even now it kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth of like, man,
It is a weird point to make at the beginning of an episode where you're gonna show one of the biggest atrocities ever committed by man to man, and then be like, well, the Germans weren't all bad. We could have been friends, some of these soldiers and I. We just had a little differences, and it's like, It's kind of counterintuitive to what I feel like is the point of the episode, but it is an interesting. Maybe it's to take down the brunt of the impact a little bit. Yeah, I don't know.
Or maybe it was said during a different part, as they're interviewing these guys through everything.
Oh, and you
I
think they
wonder if that
just kind
question
of
was maybe through a
manipulated it?
different thing, and maybe they just put it in that episode. Well, you got to think at the time, again, you're going through, you're watching this each, say, week that HBO's releasing a new episode. You don't know what's coming at the end of this episode. So, yeah, maybe this is one that they kind of do that up front just to mislead you. Because they kind of talk about, one, you're going through the thing with Winters, where Winters is going through and kind of getting the realization of, I lost 4 people. I'm losing everything back home. I'm dealing with this. I'm dealing with that. Why am I here? And then even as they're driving through and yelling at the German soldiers, why are we here? Why are we here? Why did you drag us all the way across the world? Tom Hardy's character is reading the book. Why, or the article? Why we fight? So I feel like it's kind of leading you just into that realm of it, and then it throws the big curveball.
I love how unimportant the death of Hitler feels like in this episode. Like what seems like it would be a major like political and turning point in the war is just kind of like, well, Hitler killed himself. Well, he should have killed himself 3 years ago. Yeah, he should have, but he didn't. So like, here we go. We're going to the eagle's nest. Uh,
Well, and then it was like, are we going home? No. War's over? Nope, we're not done yet. Going to the nest.
I feel like he is such a major character in this entire war, but in this show and in this episode, I feel like that he's just so non-important, which is good. I feel like he needs to be non-important. I mean, he is a historical figure, but at the same time, like, yeah, he fucking sucks. Like,
I saw something on Reddit that was one of those, like, it's been the big trend of, like, the 6 square grid or whatever, and it lists, like, all the characters, and it's always, like, the hot one. The hot one, like, made, or the one made to be hated. And then in the bottom right, it's, like, no little to no screen time, but most like most plot importance. And that one for Band of Brothers just said Hitler. And I'm like,
no,
oh, all right, that's fair. And now it makes sense. They're just like, Hitler's dead, killed himself, huh? Okay.
the other thing that really kind of caught me off guard was Perconte going off on O'Keefe of like, he's just coming in to fight, like he's doing what he's supposed to be doing actually, like checking his weapon. He's humming Oklahoma or whatever, or she'll be coming around the mountain. I think he is at that point. And then Perconte just like rails into him of like, that's the problem why no one remembers your name is because you guys only last a couple minutes, blah blah blah. You guys just end up dying before you even realize you're dead. All this, and I'm just like, Jesus, dude, like, fuck off.
I I am torn because at some point I kind of understand it. Like, this dude has just seen how many people die throughout the fact he's been there the whole time. He's witnessed people lose their legs, lose their limbs. He's witnessed people die. He's witnessed all of these things, and now he's got someone who's coming in at a time where he's finally in a spot with it's warm. They're not hunkered down in snowfall, trees aren't exploding. They have good food. And now he's got someone who just showed up 2 weeks ago who didn't have to go through all this shit. That's like, oh man, I can't wait to go to Berlin and shoot some Germans. I feel like it was kind of the feeling of this American idealism, right? Like the people back home who are just like, I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna fight the Germans and I'm gonna do this, and it's just like the war movies. And then the guys who are there are like, you don't understand. We've been in this shit, and let me tell you, you don't want to be in it. So then when you see O'Keefe after finding the camp and he's just broken, yeah.
I haven't seen it yet. I do really want to see the movie that came out last year, Jonathan Glazer, The Zone of Interest, which is it's about an Auschwitz commandant and his wife who strive to build a dream life for their family in a house and garden right beside the camp, and kind of would focus on what we're talking about a little bit in this episode of like the unknowing people next door to the camp in the vicinity of it, and like they're blissfully ignorant or maybe not so much life of what is happening right next door to you.
Hmm.
Nominated for an Oscar, it won Best International Film. So
Okay. I now that you say that, I do know what I do remember that.
this episode continues the amazing opening shot streak that this series has had, because the opening shot on the violin playing is so good in my eyes. I don't know. I really liked it. And I was just confused. I was like, what is the violin for? Like, how does this play into, like, they're still in the war, right? And so, like, as it, like, comes out and, like, twists and reveals that, like, these people are playing Beethoven in the street while they clean up their town, I was like, wow. And I'll give it to them. This episode did such a good job, and we kind of talked about it earlier, but like telling so much without saying so much. Like that Nixon and the German widow, like they never exchanged a word, but so much emotion is told just from like the looks they share in the house, and then the looks they share in the camp at the end.
Yeah, I the both the intro and the outro of that, I think that was one of those things that at the end again just gut wrenching. And such a beautiful shot of watching him just close the violin case, and then it's just kind of sits on that shot. Yeah, that this episode, I think for being that there really wasn't a lot of like action in this episode, it was beautifully shot.
Well, and this is the top rated episode from the series, and we kind of talked about that before, like leading up. We're like, hey, here it is. This is the top rated episode, and it's interesting to me that like it is the top rated episode. I feel like most people watching this series would probably lean towards a more actiony episode, as like the D-Day one, which I think is the second highest rated. But like, I don't I don't know. It is a really well done episode, and something I saw on Reddit someone talking about was like this episode does such a good job of like it could have presented this like the Holocaust and everything in like such a bigger picture, but it narrowed on this specific thing, and it just kind of asked like, what do we do now? Not everything that had happened, and like all of this, and like really kind of like, I don't want to say milking it, but like, expanding on the whole thing more. But it was just kind of like, this happened. How do we move forward from this. Like, we're feeding the people, we're trying to get them housed. Like, you know, we enacted martial law, and we're forcing the Germans to kind of deal with their own demons on this cleanup crew. And yeah, it's an interesting way of telling this story of such a, you know, large scale, because they do tell you the statistics after the episode of, it was like 5 million non-Jewish people and then 6 million plus Jews, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was 5 million between the Polish and
It was like the handicapped,
yeah. Well, and I know like the
Romani.
Romani. Yes. Okay. I know that was a big chunk of the people too. And then yeah, that wasn't even including the actual Jewish people in the camps, and that was another like 6 million. It's just it's crazy. That was another thing I think with the violin playing, and then it kind of stops, and then when you read those statistics, and again the thing that when it pops up and tells you that no one knew this was going on, and it's just how do 6 million people realistically, let's call it 11, how does 11 million people not get noticed?
Also, just love how quickly they reacted, though, too. In the book, I think they say like Winters immediately breaks in or gets them to go into like a place with like all the stores and stuff, and starts like spreading out food and distributing it, and like they handled the situation the best they could, I feel like, given what they had at the time. And I mean, it's like you just feel so like, I don't know. It's not Sink's fault, but I'm just like, fucking Sink sucks, dude. Like when he forces them to like go back into the camp, and I'm just like, oh,
Which I does make sense. I have not had the closest experience I've had to that is I've done 30 hours. When I was in high school, I did two like 30-hour fasting things, and you finish that, and I remember the one we finished it, and someone's parents made like hamburgers and hot dogs, and they brought chips and all these things, and I watched a kid try to eat like two hot dogs and two full hamburgers, and within like 10 minutes he was laying on the floor like sick to his stomach, because your stomach contracts so much when you're not eating, and he just basically tried to expand his stomach in minutes, and it was like, you can't do that. Your body will not handle it. You have to slowly kind of bring yourself into getting food. And that, yeah, when they were like breaking off pieces of bread, and they're like, you have to stop feeding these, like, you can't give these people unlimited food. They will eat themselves to death. They will. Their stomachs will literally expand at a rate that they are not meant to expand, and it will cause problems.
this podcast episode is brought to you by Audible, the leading name in audiobooks and spoken word content. And then they got more than audiobooks. They got podcasts. They got original audio content. And you can even listen to our podcast on there. And you can listen to Band of Brothers by Stephen E. Ambrose if you want. And get it for free and a 30-day free trial, so you can experience everything that Audible has to offer. If you go to audibletrial.com/cocktailsandclassics, that's audibletrial.com/cocktailsandclassics.
It was a very good episode. Again, for something that not a lot actually happens. My key takeaways. Let's break this down. One, Nazis bad. Let's just start there. Nazis bad. The stuff they did, terrible. terrible. And if you're out there and you
Go
are
fuck yourself.
still somehow a denier of any of this shit, don't listen to our podcast. don't I don't want you listening. I don't want your support. Don't do it. If you're one of the deniers, if you're someone who still openly is a Nazi, I don't want your support. Do not listen to my podcast. I don't support you. Not cool. Lack of a better word. Fuck off. All right, now that that's out of the way, this episode, again, not super actiony, but a very heart-wrenching episode. I still want to talk about the fact that I leave this episode. Most of the other episodes, I'm like, oh wow, I have a newfound respect for like the character that this episode surrounds. And with Nixon, I'm just like, honestly, he seemed kind of cooler before this episode, because it was kind of like mysterious. He was never really around. He only kind of showed up to explain like, oh, we're moving. Oh, this is going on, because he's mostly just with HQ. So I don't come away feeling like this newfound wow, Nixon was such a badass for doing X, Y, and Z. It was just more like yeah, man, what Nixon went through sucks, but most of the other guys went through just as much, if not more shit. I will say the character I came away with that feeling of like, wow, props to this guy, is Liebgott, for sure. He's the one I came away with being like, all right, I'm glad we got more of like his background and his information. I am curious to see how this all wraps up.
Same.
Obviously, I know they're going to Berlin, but like, my big curiosity is once they kind of get
I don't
to
even
the
think they go to
like,
Berlin.
I mean, to be honest, I don't know that they get there because I think Germany surrenders not long after.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think they just go to like Hitler's eagle nest, and they might be done after that.
Yeah. Well, and then it's going to be the thing of like, are they going to talk about, because I mean, realistically, the entire company, I believe, just from something I read without following too much, was that, or from some of the bios, they were supposed to go to the Pacific right after. That was their next Easy Company's next stop. But I think the war in Japan ended not long after the front in Germany. But I'm just kind of curious to see. I really want to see. I want one of those nice, like, Saving Private Ryan, where, like, Matt Damon kind of morphs into old Matt Damon. I want that, but I want it to be, like, the actor, and then it kind of morphs into the actual person as they are older during the beginning of the episodes, because I want to know who is who.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple I'm like, oh, okay, this person. Like, I didn't recognize the person at the beginning of this episode with the super thick Southern accent.
I mean, we talked about this last episode. Like, I do want them to be like, whether that's the beginning, the end, like when they do the interviews, to be like, either a nameplate pops up, like a lower third, or,
or like even a side by side.
Yeah.
Something. Tell me which one of these, which one of these soldiers is the person that, was explaining stuff throughout.
And I feel like what we're probably going to get just a quick glance. I don't know how much actually happens at the Eagle Nest, but I feel like we're just going to get a quick moment of that, and then I feel like it'll be a lot of wrap up in the second half of like going home or like post-war activities, like some of that stuff. I feel like it may focus less on the war.
I could see them doing kind of like but I don't know, because my God, as cool as that would be, 40 minutes of them being like, Nixon went home and became sober and yada 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 and lived in California until whenever, when he unfortunately passed away.
I mean, it's not gonna be
Like,
40 minutes of that, but I
well,
feel like it'll be.
if they're gonna do for every fucking member of Easy Company, my God.
Well, no, I feel like we'll focus on the like whatever 15 people that we focused on. I don't know.
I don't know.
Some people might
I feel
share.
like it's
Some
just
people
gonna be a
might share
lot.
cards.
Probably. That's true.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how we wrap this thing up. Well, are we gonna discuss what happened in this episode at the beginning, like seeing those things? Because, like you're saying, if you're watching this weekly, the interview before, you're not trying to spoil what's gonna happen in the episode. So, like maybe the beginning of the next one is gonna be about seeing the camp, or is it gonna be about like the war coming to an end, or like processing what we just happened over the last.
Like I said, I'm gonna be curious to see if what, yeah, what the interviews overall. I have a feeling it's gonna be a lot of talk about like returning home, what that was like coming home, and what that is. But I don't know. Okay, I do just want to point out real quick about this. One of my patented like, oh my god, I didn't recognize this guy from this thing. The guy whose picture Nixon shatters, he is one of like the head Nazis in Indiana Jones.
Oh my god.
He's one of the German majors in Indiana Jones. So there's a shocker. Spielberg probably just had like that photo and just like, hey,
Probably
we're gonna give you
laying around.
money. We're gonna give you money. That way we don't have to bring anyone in. Like we're just gonna use a photo of you from Indiana Jones.
So I hope you've been enjoying our series so far. There's one episode left after this. Catch up wherever you listen to podcasts. Catch up on Band of Brothers if you haven't seen it or you haven't seen it in a while over on Max or HBO Max. And share us with your friends and family. Check us out next week as we do episode 10, Points. And as always, watch responsibly.